Thanks, Paula. Hi, everybody. My name's Nancy, and I'm an alcoholic. I was just trying to be on good behavior for Paula today with acting patient out there. No, and the first thing she said was, well, I'm going to go call Chris. And then Chris just came walking up right after she said that. But he said, I can't help you. So, no, we couldn't get into the car with the, with the traditional coat hanger thing. But so I said, now, and Chris was there too, does anybody else have a key to your car? She said, yes, my brother-in-law does. And where is he? Well, he's working. Where does he work? In Virginia. So I said, well, you might think about giving somebody else a key to your car from now on, or keeping a spare in your purse or whatever. But we've just had a great time, and I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me here and for giving me such a nice hostess as Paula. We really have had a great time together, and I just love meeting people. And I mean, I couldn't have gotten nervous about this. She was so nervous. It was just really cute to watch, and so I do get nervous, but I couldn't, and I was like, it's okay, Paula, it's all right. I was just what's the worst thing that can happen? And I tried everything, and she did great. So, we do what we're asked to do here. The first time I was asked to give a 10-minute talk, I was asked like a month ahead of time. That's just terrible to do that to anybody. And I had been up to the podium once before then as a, just we have call-up meetings, and you just get called up, and I just like shook like that. Somebody got smelling salts out, and so, asking me like a month ahead of time to give a 10-minute talk was all I did for that month, was give 10-minute talks to myself at home in the mirror. And then, okay, hold on to the podium, and then your shaking won't show so much. And then I got there, and it was a little bookcase set up on a table, and I couldn't hold on to it. And, and it's okay, but, when I got sober, I was just told I had to do whatever I was asked to do. And, it's just the funniest thing I can see now in my sobriety that what I've done here has been invaluable, more valuable than if I had gone to school and taken classes. And I've learned everything that I need to learn here because I've gotten up to podiums when I'm just shaking so bad and scared to death. And so it's been great to be around Paula and to meet a new person in AA, and to come here and see people. I know Frank from California, and we got sober in the same group. And I heard Tim and Cricket, and I just identified with everything they said, as I'm sure you all did. And we kind of have different paths that got us here to Alcoholics Anonymous, but inside we all feel the same. And when I was listening to them, I was thinking how I was going through kind of a surly mood in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I said, everybody just says the same thing here, like I'm going to say something different, And then I finally realized, I thought that, I guess, because I still thought I was different. And then I finally realized that's what we all say. We all feel the same, and that's why this thing works. And we hear people talk about our feelings, and we identify, and then we feel okay, and we feel safer, and that's what this is all about. And I do live in Minneapolis now. I've been living there for 9 years, and I'm sorry this is not cold, here. So, and when I moved to Minneapolis 9 years ago from California, where I'd lived all my life, everybody just talked to me about the cold all the time. And I said, well, the positive thing is your nipples are erect all the time in Minnesota. Aren't we told that you have to find something positive out of everything? So that's it, as I'm like walking down the street in my fleece-lined underwear. But I have been living there for 9 years now. My husband took a job there, and it's just great because we found our AA there, and that's what we do there. No matter where I've ever gone, if I do AA, everything else works out fine. And I feel so fortunate to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I remember going to my very first meeting a little over 25 years ago, and it was like that. It was divine intervention that was getting me there that night. And it was like a split-second thing. It seems like it only could have happened right then. And after I was being driven to the meeting, I was thinking, why me? Why do I have to go there? And I was trying to get out of the car, and I told my husband I was going to jump out of the car and take me home. And I was thinking, why me? And I have 5 brothers who all drank. It seemed they drank more than I did, and they got in trouble and did things outwardly that I didn't do. They got arrested and they had fights and got in trouble all the time, and I was the one home scrubbing the floor for my mother, so she'd say, what a good girl you are. And you know, and I was thinking, why do I have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous? And now, you know, I'm here all this time, and it became a thing of like, I'm so lucky, you know, to be here. Why was I chosen? And over the years, I've seen people come and go, and I've seen people stay sober for long periods of time and go out and drink again. And I've worked with people who seemingly they're doing everything that I did, and they say they want it, but they just don't get it. And I honestly don't know why that is, but I'm still here, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I come from a family of a lot of alcoholics, and I have 5 brothers, as I said, are all alcoholics. My father died of alcoholism. My sister is 12 years younger than I am, and when I was still living in California, she used to call me up all the time with her life's problems. She's not an alcoholic, but she has the fears and the insecurities and no self-worth and all that kind of stuff that we have here. And she would call me up all the time and try to talk to me about these problems in her life, and I would try to give her the answers that I had gotten in AA, but you know, it's not a life and death thing for her, so she didn't have to take the solutions or work on the problems like I did. And finally, one day I said, Kathleen, I have the answer now to your life, and I know how you can be really happy. I want you to go out and get drunk and take drugs and get in trouble and come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything will be just fine. And of course, it doesn't work that way. But and then I have my mother, and my mother is still living, and my mother is most definitely a professional martyr, and that's just my mother, and I've come to accept that. And my father died of alcoholism, as I said, and she just complained about his drinking day in and day out, and then he died. And then the first man that my mother started dating was a man that had come to my group on and off for years, and would come in, and then he'd leave and get drunk, and he was calling people all the time and saying that he just burned down his trailer or he got hit by a car or something. And my mother meets this man, and she didn't go to AA, she just met this man on the street, you know. He was drunk, and so, you know, after complaining about my father all those years, that's the guy she started dating, and then she started trying to take care of him and pour his alcohol down the drain. And she didn't end up with him because he ended up staying sober for several years, so she had to find someone else. And that's the way she is, and she married some jerk that I cannot stand, this man, but you know, it was just a life of problems, and I finally accepted that's the way she survived. She went to Al-Anon one time, simply once, and found out that they work on themselves there, I guess, and she, you know, wanted to talk about everything, and so she never went back. But you know, just growing up in my family, just, you know, briefly, it was kind of a wild family with all the boys getting in trouble and all the drinking going on, and we all went to Catholic school, and when I don't know, during that time, the neighbors put their house up for sale one time that I know of, and the kids there said, we're moving because of your family. And their parents had told them that, I guess, and I don't think they were supposed to tell me, but they did. So it was just too much for them. They had to move away. So it was pretty wild in my house all the time, and you know, as I said, I identified with the other speakers, and I mean, my running away when I was young consisted of me going and hiding behind a dresser because I just wanted to hear how they talked about me when I wasn't there. I wanted to see, first of all, if they knew I was gone and if they cared, and that's what I wanted to know. But there's just, that's a lot of kids, not as many as the Crickets, but I don't know how many were all together at one time. I know there were 17, but there must have been quite a few together at one time. So, but 7 seemed a lot to me at the time. And, I just kind of went through my life, and I didn't know anything until I got here. When I started drinking, I don't remember picking up the drink and saying I'm drinking because I have such low self-worth or I'm afraid of people. I didn't know that, but when I got sober, I sure could look back on my life and I thought, how did I ever make it? It's really difficult for us, and so we usually pick up a drink at some point, and I was a young teenager when I picked up a drink, and I mean, it was all over my house. One time, though, when I was pretty young, I went to the cupboard to get some vodka, and I snuck in there, and I poured some out of the bottle and took it up to my bedroom and took a drink, and it was already water, and so it was really hard to drink in my house. So when I was growing up, we had a built-in beer keg, and I would save up empty jars during the week, and then when nobody was looking, my father would put the keg in on Friday night, and I would sneak down there whenever I could and fill up all these jars and put them in my closet and leave them there, and then get as much as I could on the weekend, and then when it was empty, which it emptied up the keg emptied out quite fast, then I'd go in my bedroom and sit there and drink. And as I said, I never really knew why I was doing that. I didn't have a reason at the time. I just did it. And that's pretty much how I did it until I got here. And of course, my drinking progressed over the years, and I needed it, and I didn't know I needed it that bad until maybe the last couple years. But, I just went through high school, and I did things that I needed to do to get attention, which was talked about by the other speakers. And if I got in trouble, I didn't care. I didn't think about that either. I know Cricket mentioned this, and all my life, it's been, you dare me to do something and I'll do it. It doesn't matter what it is. I just do it. And so people would dare me to do crazy things in school, and I did it. And I have my annual from high school, and almost everybody in there wrote to Crazy Nancy and something about drinking. And I just loved that. I loved that they called me that. And when I was in the 10th grade, I got pregnant. I'd never been on a date in my life. I didn't have a boyfriend, and I was in Catholic school, so I tried to tell him it was like the Immaculate Conception. No, you remember that, don't you? But it was just one of those things. I loved horses, and there was a stable by my house, and I went up there all the time and rode the horses and cleaned the stalls and did all that kind of stuff. And there was a guy up there who was much older than I was, and he said, "I bet you can't sneak out of your house in the middle of the night and come up here." I said, "I bet I can." And so I did, and I got pregnant. And so I'd never had sex in my life. That was the first time. So then I really knew, that God, up there, he's really watching over me. And, that was way back in the early 60s that happened. And, people sometimes ask me, do you ever want to find that I had a boy? And I said, no, because all my friends date younger guys, and I'm probably one of my friends' mother-in-laws or something, so no, I don't want to find him. So, but that was in the early 60s, that was like a bad thing. And my parents had to pretend they sent me away to live with relatives, make up this story, and I had to go live with the family and take care of their kids. And I was 15 years old, and I felt like I was 9 years old, and I cried every night, and I hated being there. And I had the baby, gave it up for adoption, and then went back and finished high school and just carried on like I had before and drank a lot. And after high school, got married the first time because a man asked me to marry him. And another thing about me is that I know that you don't identify with this, but I hate being rejected and I hate hearing the word no, so don't we plan our lives around not hearing that word? When you think about it later and you get here, I mean, I realized how my life was always based on that. I don't want to hear no. I don't want to hear any kind of rejection, and so I didn't like to hurt people either. I assume I know how everyone else feels too. So this man asked me to marry him, and I married him because he's a very nice man, but, I didn't want to say no. And so we got married, and I was married to him when I came into AA. We had 3 kids. As it turned out, my kids are adopted. After I had that one baby, I couldn't have any more, and we adopted kids, and that was, I always just thought I'd grow up and have all these kids, and that was it. And it was really hard to go through that and drink. And in the beginning, I was able to manage it when we got twins the first time, and I was able to control it a little bit. And then on the third one, it was really hard, and I planned all my appointments around drinking. And we're very clever, though. We can get away with things, And they never, snuck up to my house and looked in the windows or anything. I knew when they were coming, and I planned appointments around that. The day that we got called to pick up our 3rd son, I had been very drunk the night before. I wasn't taking good care of the other kids. And my husband was at work, and we got the phone call, and all I thought was, thank goodness I got out of trouble one more time, because my husband was getting very mad at me, and he really couldn't prove what I was doing. He marked the bottles. I made new marks on the bottles. He tried to come home at lunchtime to catch me, but I was way smarter than he was. And I would wax the floor, and I never knew when he was coming, but every day I would wax the floor and keep it all wet, put a lunch on the counter, and I'd be in a part of the floor that he couldn't walk across. And I did that every day in case he'd come home, because I was drinking before noon by this time. But the day, we got a call to get our 3rd son, I didn't think, great, we're getting a baby. Isn't that wonderful? I thought, Two things. I thought, I'm out of trouble, and that poor kid having me for a mother. But what am I going to do? Tell him I don't want him? Because, And my husband came and got me, and he was still a little mad. And we were very sad driving there to pick up this boy. And inside in my head, I was just thinking, this poor child, and wanting to jump out of the car that time and kill myself. And it was a year after that I got to AA, and it was a couple years, when we got the twins, and I was home now with the kids. I knew every day it was just some way to drink. I used to try to wait till 12 o'clock, because I would say the businessmen are out drinking at 12 o'clock. I'm a housewife. I can drink at 12 o'clock. And then I would need to drink earlier, so I would say I started an earlier shift that day. I was on a different shift, and I'd drink. And then eventually I discovered that a drink in the morning helped my hangover, and you don't want to feel bad, so you have a drink. And it was just as soon as my husband would leave in the morning, I'd have a drink, and I'd be standing at the window at nighttime waiting for his car after I'd done my lunchtime thing, waiting for his car to come home up the street, and I'd be having a drink at the window, and I didn't see it yet, so I'd go get another one real quick, and then I'd see his car, and then I'd run in and make him a drink, chew a cigarette, hold my breath, stand at the front door with his drink, like, hi, honey, here's your drink. Like he didn't know. And when I finally got here, he told me, of course he knew, he just didn't know what to do about it. It wasn't talked about as much as it is nowadays, and he said he hated to go to work every day, and he never knew what was going to happen while he was gone. And the kids had some accidents because I didn't watch them, and serious things, and they're okay, but I locked them in the bedroom because I couldn't deal with these 3 little boys. I put a lock on their door and locked them in, and they're little boys, and one of them climbed up the dresser and it fell over on his head, and his head was cut open. I'm out in the backyard drinking wine, sitting up on the mountain crying about my life. And, things happen to them, and I'm just very lucky, and I know God was watching over me. And I had a neighbor who told me 20 years after when I was 20 years sober, I went out to visit her, and she told me that she was always watching my kids, and I didn't know that, But I guess when your neighbors see you on a motorcycle with one little kid in front and one in back, riding around the cul-de-sac circle, they're going to watch you, So So, I just like it was a day in and day out thing with that trying to drink and saying, I'm not going to do this anymore, and just like we do, and not knowing where the end is. And I was very sad and physically getting sick and having to be hospitalized, but nobody ever, just saying you're an alcoholic, and so it was just a day in day out thing. And me just by myself, and I was peeking out the drapes all the time at my neighbors and watching what are they all doing out there. You know how we don't feel like we fit in anywhere. I hated talking to my neighbors. I would look out the drapes and look at them in their dresses or skirts and thinking, why are they dressed like that? They're just cleaning their houses. They're just housewives. What are they doing out there? And then, I'm in my own house, like hiding from them. And one of them was really nosy, this lady, and she used to come knock on my front door, and I never would answer my door, and I'd be behind the couch, and then I'd hear her open my gate. She was going to go look for me in the backyard, and I'd have to go around the other side of the couch hiding from this lady. And she's the one that we did live on this cul-de-sac, and I lived on the end, so I could just look out and watch these people all day long. And she's the one I didn't like at all, and because she was so nosy. And she's the one I threw eggs on her patio one time. I'm this housewife, and I climbed over the back fences and threw eggs on her patio because she bragged about her patio too much, and I made it look like they came from behind her. So then when she did catch me one day, she told me what those terrible teenagers that lived behind her did to her patio. And then one time she was outside, and I was in my house, and I could take my phone to the front window, and I called her phone number, and she was very, very top heavy, and she heard her phone ringing, so she went plopping across the street up to her front door and to get her telephone, and then I hung up. And then she waits for a little while, and then she goes back out in the street. Then I did it again, and so that's it for me. I did things growing up, things that got me in trouble, but now I'm stuck in the house with these kids, so I have to amuse myself somehow. I really was afraid to leave my kids, and I tried to take care of them the best I could. And I was in this house, and I rearranged furniture. Like every day I would rearrange furniture, and I don't mean like the couch from one wall to the other. It was like the living room became the den, and the den became the bedroom, and and we had 3 levels, and I would be pushing a couch up the stairs with my back, and it's like, and then when I got tired of rearranging furniture, I would dye my hair, and my hair was like whatever, and so I finally, the day came, when, inside I just felt terrible. I cried a lot. I sat in my backyard up on this mountain drinking bottles of wine, looking out over everything and feeling very sad about my life. And I was young, in my early 20s, and I just thought, nobody understands me, and the world's passing me by, and I just kind of thought that's how my life was going to go on every day like that, and that was going to be it. And I was very sad, and the day came when I did end up coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had to keep up a front somewhat and try to join in things that my husband wanted to do. And we went to parties and things every now and then, but I would have as many drinks as I could before we went to a party because I couldn't talk to those grown-up people. And I certainly didn't fit in with them. And so I would have lots of drinks when my husband went to get the babysitter, and then we'd go to a party and they'd give me one drink and I would pass out somewhere, or push everyone in the pool, or throw up on something in their house, or just do something. And so the day that I came to AA, we had some people over to watch a Super Bowl. It was in January of 1971, and I was making Bloody Marys all day. I never left the punch bowl. I made Bloody Marys, and I drank them, and I made them and drank them. And the last man was leaving our house probably around 6 or 6:30 that night, and I just walked out the door and got in his car with him. He was by himself, and we drove away, and I just did it. It was no big deal. I thought he would just drive me around the block and bring me back, and he took me somewhere else, and we drank, and then And I called my husband in a couple hours. And I never did that before. And I asked him to come get me. And he was very mad at me. He didn't know where I went. And he had to get the kids, or he got the neighbor to watch them, and he came and he got me. And it was really the first time, I think, that he just started in on me about my drinking. And I certainly couldn't quit, and I certainly didn't know what to do about it. And I walked in the house, and I picked up the telephone, and I was calling this old boyfriend that I had had in high school. And we had one car in our family, and I didn't want to take off in that car. And I just wanted to go away, and I wanted to leave them alone. I wanted them to be happy, and I thought I was ruining the kid's life and my husband's life. And I called this old boyfriend, and I was just going to ask him for a ride to come pick me up and take me to the next town and leave me there. That was my plan that night, just drop me off there. And I just wanted to leave my family. And my husband, I got this guy on the phone, and my husband came in and he said, I don't care where you go, but you can't run away from it. And so, as I said before, it must have been like divine intervention, and God was watching over me, and that was my time to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hung up the phone, and I called my brother-in-law at the time, who is a Catholic priest, and he was living in Pennsylvania. I was living in California. And I called him because I thought he could pray for me, because he was a priest and he could, talk to God better than anybody else could. And so he got on the phone, and it was just looking back and talking to him. It's just unusual that he was home at that time and everything. It all fits together, though. And he came on the phone, and it took me quite a while to get the words out of my mouth that I had a drinking problem, because I'd never said them to anybody out loud. And he told me to go to AA. And he had gone to AA so he could see what it was like, so he could help people. And it was still, not that late, and my husband got on the phone somehow and found out where there was a meeting out where we lived. And I went upstairs this night, and I put on this, I was very heavy then, and I was drinking a lot of beer and wine because it was cheap and we didn't have any money. And my hair was all this dyed orange, crackly, falling out stuff, and my face was blotchy and puffy and red. And so I went up, and I wore just like cut off Levi's and a white t-shirt is what I wore almost all the time. And I went upstairs and put on this orange polyester pantsuit that was in my closet. And it was probably something that I stole, because I was into doing that, and I don't ever know why I did it, and I only stole ugly things, and I just did it for the thrill of it, I guess. And but I put on this orange polyester pantsuit, and so then everything else about me was orange and yellow and everything. And my neighbor watched the kids, and my husband got me in the car that night to get me off to that meeting. And we got to this meeting finally, and it was just ending, and there were about 30 people in the room, and it was like a middle aisle, folding chairs on either side. We walked in the back door, and the meeting was over like 5 minutes after we got there. A man was talking, he finished, he sat down. Now in my mind, I looked a lot better than I'd looked in a long time, so I didn't really think I stood out in a crowd. But the minute that meeting was over, every single person in that room just made a beeline for me. And it was like, a newcomer, and it was like a neon newcomer. When I look back, it's like, how could they not see me, and here I thought I looked fine. And everybody came, like the minute that man finished talking, there was a crowd of people around me in a circle, and somebody had a cup of coffee, and somebody had a piece of cake, and somebody had literature, and this and that, and they're all just saying, welcome here, 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 and they started going around in a circle, and moving, and I started throwing up. And I just went out the door to the parking lot because I was throwing up, and they're all so happy, and they all came outside. And everyone came outside, and they were standing around me, and they hadn't had a newcomer in a long time out there, and they wanted to see this one, and watch her throw up in the parking lot. Come on. So they're all like holding hands and like singing and dancing and everything. And so that was my introduction into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I do remember a man that night. I just remember while I was throwing up and they're all kind of like chattering and so happy and everything, that this man looked up at the sky and he said, "We alcoholics are such lucky people. We're chosen by God." And then I'd throw up again, And we don't feel like that when we come here at all. I do feel like that now, but I didn't feel like that then. And that was in January of 71, and my sobriety is May 23rd, 1971. I stayed sober, until I'll get to that, but that was there I was, and these ladies wanted me to stay with them that night, these two older women in their 50s, and they wanted me to stay there and talk to them, and they said they would give me a ride home, and I held on to my husband's leg, literally like I was like my little baby, like my little kid at home. No, I don't want to stay here. I didn't know what they were going to do to me or take me or where they were going to take me or what was going to happen, and I didn't want to stay there with them. And so we went home, but I guess my husband had slipped them some information about me. And because the next morning I was just sitting in my living room just staring at the wall. Something had happened to me. I didn't know what. But I was just staring at the wall, and there was a knock on the door, and I found out later she was in between drinks, and they just nabbed her because they thought they might scare me away because they were older than I was. So they brought this other lady along, and the three ladies sat in my living room. This is like good old-fashioned 12-step call, which I miss so much now, just calling on those wet drunks. And they just sat in my living room and they talked to me and they told me things about themselves that I had never in my life heard anybody talk about before. I didn't have any friends that I talked to like that, We didn't tell each other things like they were telling me. And I had a lot of secrets when I came in here, and things that, even as I was sober, things that I thought, well, I'm never going to be able to tell anybody that. And I don't have any secrets anymore. There isn't anything that I couldn't say because I've heard it all here. But they just sat in my living room and they shared with me, and it was just like instant relief for me. And they took me to a meeting that night, and I remember that night when they asked, "Are there any newcomers here?" And I put my hand up. You know how self-obsessed we are, and it's just so hard for me. It was so hard to realize that everybody in that room was an alcoholic, and everybody came in like that, and you put your hand up just a little bit, and you just feel like everyone's head turns and stares at you, and then they're all going to go home and get on the phone and talk about you or something, And, the thing about speaking that this little thing I do in my mind now, because people have said to me, "Who spoke at the meeting last night?" And it might take me a while to remember if I do remember. So I say the same thing when I'm sitting there. It's like I told Paula, they're just thinking about going to the dance tonight and who they're going to dance with and who they're going to end up with. But for years, everything had something to do with me. And so that night I raised my hand and thought everyone was staring at me, and that was my introduction. And then they took me to meetings that week, and they were just so kind to me, and they took care of me. And I did stay sober for 4 months, and I loved it, and I wanted to be sober, but I didn't get a sponsor during that time. Neither one of those ladies, took over, as they didn't tell me they would be my sponsor. And when you don't have self-worth just because you walk in the doors, and I always, all my life, felt like a bother. I just kind of felt like a lot of my life when people would see me coming along, they'd move somewhere else, and like the neighbors did that time. And so I just didn't have the courage to ask anybody to be my sponsor because all my life I did so many things that I didn't want to do. So I thought that, well, I won't even burden them with this because they probably don't want to, so I won't ask them. That was my whole thinking, I guess. And so during that time, I didn't have a sponsor. I went to a lot of meetings and I loved what was happening, but the time I needed to talk to somebody. And also with a sponsor, I just wasn't sure what it was all about. And I thought maybe it was just for if you had a very serious problem and if there was a death or something like that that you needed somebody. But to talk about little resentments or hurt feelings or something like that that we're not even in touch with yet, I just didn't have any idea what that was all about. So I did drink, and prior to drinking my half-gallon of Spinata, on which what was hopefully my last drunk, I took some pills from my mother's house, tranquilizers, saying, well, I can take pills. This is about drinking, and took the pills, and then a couple days later drank because I took the pills, and my husband was late with the car, and I'm an alcoholic, and you should never be late with the car if a person's supposed to go to a meeting. I'm an alcoholic, for heaven's sakes, and so I happened to have some wine in the refrigerator, which I still cooked with at the time, which I don't anymore. And I walked in there and I drank that wine, and then when he got home, I went and got this half-gallon of Spinata wine, which at the time I think was $1.65 for this great big green bottle. And you know what? I wanted to be in AA, but I wanted to relieve some pressure, the stuff that had built up. Well, of course that didn't work, and I drank, and then I thought, well, I came into AA and I thought I had done some very bad things in my life, and then I heard all these other people talking about their bad things, and their bad things are worse than my bad things, and I don't like that. I want to be noticed, for something. And so I thought, I just kind of thought I'd get arrested that night, and I was driving on the freeway, drinking my wine, just driving down the freeway, the Ventura Freeway in California, and then when I finished the bottle, I threw it out the window. And I just kept driving, and okay, where are the police? No, they're not here. And I just went home. And once again, I woke up face down in my blue shag carpeting with my red Spinata throw-up, like I had always done. So I'm sorry I didn't get arrested that time, but I tried. And so I'm back since then. It was, and prior to that time, too, I think in my mind, I thought I'll never drink again. When you find it, I hear people say that I'll never take a drink again. And I did. And I honestly don't say that to this day because I think I said before, I've seen people drink after 20 years of sobriety, and 25 and 10 and 5 and 1. And I've seen people drink. A lot of my friends have done it. And I've seen people die here. And when I used to feel bad, how at times we just feel bad coming along in AA and growing up and learning everything we need to learn, we have bad times. And people used to say, if you don't snap out of this, you're gonna get drunk and die. And I would think, if you could guarantee that, I would do it. But I won't die. And that's the bad part. I wanted to die many times, along in my sobriety, because we have an awful lot to learn when we get here. Alcohol buffered my life before I came here, and alcohol got me through up until I came here. And then you're without it, and I had no idea how important alcohol had been in my life because it was pretty much always there. And then you're like this child, as one of the other speakers says, in this grown-up body, and these feelings and thoughts, and I have this stuff today. Now I've been in AA a long time, and it's familiar to me. But recently I went out. I decided to try acting, and so I go on these auditions, and I just sit there and I am shaking, absolutely shaking when I go there. But I know enough now in my life that when I get an idea to do something, I have to do it. Otherwise, it'll end up as a regret, and I don't want any regrets along the way. So I just go do it. And before I was talking about in AA doing what I've been asked to do, and by doing this kind of thing is what has enabled me to do that and to make myself go. And I got a little, this is kind of a neat thing. I went on this one audition, and it was for this independent film. This lady was writing, producing, and directing, and she put up the money to do it. And so I got this little part, and they just told me that I play a drunk lady. Well, that's what she had me read for one part, and I guess I didn't, I don't know. She said, okay, now read this one, and it was a lady who was drunk, and I read it, and she went, good. And, I haven't been drunk in a long time, but I sure see it and hear it a lot, you know. So she gave me this part, and I went and picked up the script, and I was reading what it was about, and I was actually supposed to be laying on the floor in vomit. And you know what? I just got absolutely choked up when I read that, because that was the last time I got drunk. That's how I was. And I think what made me feel that way is because I thought it still could be like that. I could be me right now, laying in my own vomit still. And I think I was just talking about getting out there, I don't know, and doing whatever. It doesn't matter what I was talking about, because you're all thinking about the dance. So, but it has just absolutely been the most incredible journey, and in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was talking about growing and changing and having good times and bad times, and life goes on. And Paula mentioned, this thing I went through with a woman I sponsor, and she did lose her baby just 2 days before delivery, and there have been many things like that I've gone through with people. And so when I have things in my life, how can I say anything is a big deal, honestly, because I deal with these women day in and day out. This is not something that I thought somewhere along the line in AA, you know what, I think I'll be a sponsor. First of all, the group that I found in California, the Pacific Group, which is just very, very active, and not only in meetings but in helping people move, and we get together and we have weddings and divorces and weddings and divorces and whatever, but it's this very, very active group out there, and my first sponsor that I had said, now I want you to go talk to a new woman. I was scared to death to talk to a new woman. It didn't matter who they were. I didn't know what to say. And this sponsor I had then got behind me at a meeting, and she pushed me really hard. And I just ran into the new woman. Then I had to say hi. And I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't know what to say. And I've learned now that nothing that I say or don't say is really it's not going to make a person drink or not drink. I simply share my experience, strength, and hope with people. But the thing about sponsoring is I've come to realize this is God's idea that I sponsored these women. And I do believe I sponsor a lot. And when I lived in California, I sponsored a lot of women. And then 9 years ago, we moved to Minnesota. And my little alcoholic mind started saying, nobody knows you there. You've been very active in AA for 16 years already. You've done lots of things. Why don't you just cool it, not do so much, And but my husband's in AA also, and that didn't last long, and we started going to meetings. But I think in my mind, we were talking about that, I thought, I don't want to sponsor that many people. That's just so much. But God sees it differently, because they just started coming to me. And the reason is because I need it, because my head to this day, it doesn't matter how long I've been sober, it's just thoughts are lurking around and just swimming around in my head, just waiting to attack me all the time. And I need to stay very, very busy all the time in order to be okay. So it's fine. It really is fine. And it's absolutely the most rewarding thing that's ever happened to me, working with other people. I have had incredible experiences going through things with these women and being there. And like when this woman lost her baby, you know what? I just felt totally helpless. So you know what? I sat and cried with her. That's all I did. And then we would have a meeting at her house, and then we would cry. And there's just not much you can say except be there. And people in AA would just bring food by. And they'd ring her doorbell and leave it on her front porch and leave. And she told us later that what pulled her through that whole thing was because of what the people in AA did in her life. She just couldn't sink down, because we were always there. And I had the experience in California of sponsoring 2 nuns. That was really great after having, been in Catholic school. And so the first one that I sponsored was the principal of the school, so that was even better. And I got her in, I started sponsoring her, and I got out my ruler one night and I said, okay, Sheila, 7 meetings a week or else, and but it was with her that, going through the steps, and that one in particular I remember with Sheila, because she was about 42 years of age when this happened. She did her 5th step with me. And I felt so privileged because in her whole life, she had never talked to anybody like she was talking to me, or, doing this step with me. And we cried together because she was now getting this out of her. And I had been through that with the sponsor. I quit AA the day I was supposed to do my 5th step. There's no way I was going to do it. I called my sponsor and said, I'm resigning. And I didn't want to, but I didn't want to read that stuff to her. And what a freedom I got, though, from doing it. I did do it with her that day. I cried for about 3 hours and called some other women, and then I did it with her. And now that stuff's not a part of me anymore. It's gone. That's why I don't have any secrets anymore. But and so I think it's a privilege to sponsor people. And there is no greater reward that I've ever had in my whole life than to see somebody come in and who's a mess, and watch them get better, and then watch them celebrate 1 year of sobriety, and watch them sponsor somebody else. There isn't anything better in my whole life. Honestly, I'm not kidding about that. It's something. I sit in my Thursday night meeting in Minneapolis many times and get tears in my eyes, and I'm not really a crier, or but I just look at these people, one giving another one a birthday cake, because I don't know if you do that here, but we present a birthday cake with candles and we sing happy birthday. And I watch these people, and they have their suit and tie on, and Chris has his new suit on tonight. He looks so nice. And but and they get dressed up and they make a big deal about it. And I saw them when they came in, and that's what this is all about. That's why I think I'm still here. I don't want to go anywhere. I love being in Alcoholics Anonymous now, and it's not that I have to go to these meetings. I like going to these meetings, and I like being a part of it. And so, I don't want to go over because the dance and the Halloween and everything, but let's see, I'll capsulate. So I'm on my 3rd husband, Ed. His name is Ed. He's in AA. The first one and I are very good friends. I'm going to be at his house next Tuesday. I'm going to California. I stay with my ex-husband and his wife, Patty, who's an ex-nun. He had to find a nun after me. And I have a key to their house. I just let myself in. I'm like a part of their family. In November, they're coming to my house for Thanksgiving because one of our sons now lives in Minnesota, because I had this bright idea one day that he should live there, and his wife lived in Minnesota. I didn't know who she was, but I thought she lived there. And sure enough, he came and he met her, and he's married, and so he thinks I'm a witch or something. And my other son, John, is married. He's one of the twins, and he has 3 kids. And my other son, Chris, the other twin, is divorced, has a kid, doesn't pay child support, lives with his dad and his stepmom and his girlfriend, whoever, and doesn't ever have a cent of money and doesn't pay anybody any rent or anything. So go figure. I don't know, but Chris has been the one, I had to sit in a courtroom with him one time, and he had to get sentenced. Being a good mother, I'd gotten him off the first time, and, I took care of it. And then God's like, I told you not to do that, so he's getting arrested for something else, and you're out of this one. And but Patty, his stepmom, and I got him all dressed up and took him to court, and we put a nice white shirt and tie on him, and we thought he'd look so nice the judge would certainly, have some sympathy for him, and seeing his nice 2 moms with him. But he sentenced him anyway, so, and it really hurt the minute I heard that he had to go to jail, and it hurt, and it was almost like it was up here, it went down to my stomach, and then the serenity prayer came out of my mouth, and it was okay. That minute, it was okay. And oh yeah, there's a husband in between, right? Because that's just Ed and Joe, and then there was Tom. And so we got married in AA. We were both still kind of sick, and I was 8 years sober. So I need to be here still now. So we brought out the worst in each other, and that's okay. We're both still sober, and we survived it, but it was interesting. And I had to run away from home and leave him, and my kids went to live with their dad and all that, but I'll tell you all about that later. And I've done things I said I'd never do, like the kids to live with their dad. It's like, no, I'm their mother. But the day came when God said, what's best for the kids? If you love them so much, why don't you do what's right? And I was running around like a wild woman. So we've all survived it, and I do love being in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm having a great time this weekend, and it's such a comforting feeling for me to go anywhere where I've never even met people before, but just feel right at home, and you've made me feel at home. Thank you very much.